everybody. Welcome to this episode of Inside Insights, a podcast powered by Zappi. My name is Ryan. I'm joined as always by my host from the lovely Colombia, Patricia Montes de Oca. What up, Patricia?
Hey, dude, I've got a formal complaint on the part of Kelsey and myself.
Oh, yeah? What's up? What did I do?
You didn't. It's what you didn't do. Kelsey and I were not on that stage with you when you won that microphone that's just slightly off camera that you're about to show us all. And you won it for all of us, and you accepted that award for all of us. And I am more proud than I could probably or should probably admit at my age. I am just tickled pink at this gold star, and I'm so proud of us all. But I wish I had been at that stage with you guys.
Yes, you should have. And so Patricia is talking about Little Bird Marketing and Green Book did an award program for market research podcasts. And there's some great podcasts in the market research industry. Joe Lepore, Z, Adam Jolly, Jamin, many others. Merrill doing awesome podcasts.
Competition is tough.
And we were nominated and we won. But the story actually goes, I wasn't on the stage either. I was sitting in the corner having a social recharge moment with headphones in, listening to a call. And then all of a sudden, like 300 eyes turned to me at the same time, which is, I gotta be honest with you, it was awkward. I was like, why is everybody looking at me? And and then I saw Ariel go up on the stage, and Meg Ryan, not Meg Ryan from Sleepless in Seattle, Meg Ryan, the incredible account executive at Zappi. Big fan of Meg Ryan, by the way. Actually, both Meg Ryans. Anyways, Meg Ryan whispered to me, "You won the podcast award." And so then I was like, oh shit, we won a Geek Award. And so I was pretty excited. I went over, we took some pictures, but yeah, it was super cool. I wasn't expecting it. I don't know if you two were. I wasn't expecting this.
At all. I just hadn't thought of it. I mean, like, I never win anything.
We won a Geek Award, you guys. It's like it's really cool. So to everybody who listens to this podcast, all however many hundred of you, I love you. Thank you. I appreciate you. The truth is, I don't care if we won an award. This is really fun to do. I have a very stressful job, and so this is a creative expression for myself and Patricia and Kelsey and many others who help us. So we would do it if nobody listened, but I'm really glad that it's creating value for people, and so it also just motivates us to keep bringing the heat.
Oh yeah. Speaking of heat, we got some heat today.
Yeah, it's funny. I told Marie. So Marie Van Beclarum is the Global VP of Insights at ABI and Bev. And this is such an empowering episode. And I didn't know where this was going to go, frankly. Like when I met with her, we were riffing about a topic in a conference call that we had. I just said conference call because I wanted to sound like an OG who used to use WebEx. Anyways, we were talking a few weeks ago about a topic, and I was like, I need to get you on the podcast. Anyways, this episode is amazing. I had a chance to spend some time with Marie actually in Austin. What an incredible leader, absolute pioneer in where this market's going. So this interview's a treat. We're going to talk a lot about leadership and purpose and the tension that insights departments are going through. And I have a little rant, ladies, before we get into this. I was walking with a dear friend last week who is a senior insights executive at a big company, and I'm going to keep this person's identity private because I'm going to drop some truth here. He said, and Patricia's left the interview because Wi-Fi, she'll be back. He said, I think I've digitally transformed insights as much as I can without insights being willing to let go of their Legos and just let marketing do the things they need to so that we can sit on top of all the data. And then I've been on so Zappi does this thing called a customer week. We're doing customer week this week. Shout out to all of our customers. I'm learning a lot from you and our teams that support you. We need to let go of our Legos. We have got to let go of our Legos because there's so much turnover in insights departments. How many big departments have had layoffs in the last month? A lot. How many have down leveled? How many are bringing in new heads of insights every 18 months? So every freaking time there's turnover, the whole organization stops and waits for 6 months. And then somebody else comes in with their new agenda. And then we do the whole build and then it stops. And it's really, really hard for businesses to scale intelligence and get close to their customers if they're changing analog systems every time. And I think a big part of the reason for that is we don't let anybody near our toys. So then when we change, the toys stay with us. Instead, why not set up all these really smart, modern insight systems? Enable marketing and innovation to use them, because that's what they want anyway, so they can create shit people love. And then you, really wonderfully, intellectually savvy, culturally relevant insights leader, listen and watch and synthesize, and then go to your chief growth officer and say, we got to go right, and here's 4 data points as to why. I have an interview coming up with Steve Phillips, our CEO. I love Steve. He's a dear friend of mine. And we were talking about this. Someone is going to take the data in all the businesses. There's no better team than Insights to own that, but it isn't us controlling it. It's being the ones who put empathy on top of numbers. And only this function, only all of you listening can do that. So the Marie interview, I need you to listen to, because if you don't listen to it, we're not going to get there. And this opportunity is really ripe. And I'm a little animated at the moment because this has been driving me nuts. But I just think it's such a wonderful opportunity, but it's going to require us all to get comfortable setting things up for scale and enabling people to get access to the consumer, because we don't need to have all the answers. We need to help the answers exist and scale and synthesize. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk, powered by Inside Insights, a podcast powered by Zappy. I would now like to tee up our interview for the day with Marie Van Blaricum, who is badass. Very excited for today's conversation with Marie Van Blaricum, the Global Head of Insights from ABI InBev and an Insights legend. Marie, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Ryan. Really happy to be here.
And we are going to get to see each other at a real life event next week. For those of you who are going to catch us afterwards, we're going to go at the IIEX, which is not in Atlanta, Marie. It's in Austin, Texas. There's going to be a lot of fun.
I cannot wait. In real life research, it's like the coming of a new age.
Oh my God. Is this going to be like the rise of in-person qual again? I mean, who knows? Who knows what will happen?
I know it's going to be wild, though. We'll see what Lenny has planned for us.
Exactly. Do you remember like years 2004 to 2008, where every single market research conference was stating that it's the year of mobile?
I do remember going through like practicing using an app as part of our like digital training, which is just wild to think about. That it has been less than 20 years, and here we are today.
We've come so far. We've come so far. So I have a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about. I've been looking forward to this conversation. So let's just talk a little bit about kind of your journey. I mean, you've worked at some of the most iconic companies in the world. You've worked with some of the most innovative startups. But when you're taking me through your journey, start with how you got into this field in the first place. I always like to understand what got people here.
Yeah, I would love to say I had some kind of romantic story that I always wanted to be in insights. And to be honest, I fell into it. So I had an interview with Unilever, which I thought was a car parts manufacturer for a little while until I researched it. And, I have always been fascinated by elements like, why do people leave the TV on when they're not watching it? Or why, when you look at the mirror at yourself, do you tilt your head? And those are just questions that have always been in my mind. And so when I went into the interview, I didn't really understand what insights was at that point. I was, 22 years old, but I thought it sounded interesting, and it was just a natural fit. And going into that industry, I thought I'd always wanted to have businesses and startups, and that's always been kind of my passion. And I just felt like, wow, here I am getting to learn about every single aspect of business. I get to learn what makes great communication. I get to give point of views on how to grow the business. And it just always felt like a really natural fit. And it kind of went from there, and time passed, and I've always found kind of new ways to learn, new businesses to work on, new ways to innovate, and to be able to be opinionated and push the envelope and be at the table. And so I think for me, I fell into it, but I think that's probably, it chose me rather than me choosing it. And I think that's probably a good thing.
That's a wonderful story. My subconscious is telling me this needs to be a recruitment ad to get people into market research. Because I feel like one of the problems we have is getting people into this field in the first place. And you've just done a really good job of selling this industry. So thank you. I'm working with a few industry bodies to try to get more people in. And it does strike me that people don't even know what it is in the first place, which is interesting.
Yeah, or they have like an old point of view on it, that you're like out on the street chasing people down to fill out a questionnaire. And I think for me, being at the table to drive the strategies of a business, to be able to work on so many different businesses, to be able to really understand people. Like I didn't have a passport until after I graduated college. I grew up in Kansas. And so for me, like being able to learn about people in the Philippines and what drives them and who they are and what they do in their day to day, and in India and in Singapore and all around the world, like it really is so cool versus studying excels all day, or
Right.
um or studying movements and some of the different markets. For me, it's a much more kind of intriguing and curious path than some of the other paths I might have fallen into as well, during my early kind of business school days.
Yeah, I dig it. I really do. It's a wonderful industry, but I don't know about you. Every time I tell people beyond, when you're at a cocktail party,
Hmm.
what do you do? I try to skate around that answer because it's not usually what I want to talk about. But if I get to market research, I hear one of two things. You mean the focus groups or like Survey Monkey? So it's like one of those two paths, and I'm just like, okay. So I usually will tell a story like you've just done, and that tends
Yeah.
either helps or they just don't want to listen to me anymore, so they move on.
Yeah, I feel like with the digital revolution, we've gotten a little bit cooler. So it's
Yeah.
kind of married into my love for tech and data that I've always kind of had, and brought that together of like, how do you humanize it?
Yeah,
So
you're right. I mean, before all the tech stocks crashed recently, Qualtrics has helped us a lot, right? Like, I mean, they became this like really big name that really, I mean, so it's the tech darling of the last several years. So, so it's helped a lot. Okay, so you have that interview at Unilever. You realize they're not an auto parts manufacturer, but they actually make a ton of amazing products and great brands. And you held a bunch of jobs there. So, without going through them all, like, what are some of the highlights of that journey? And I was only thinking about this because a colleague of mine interviewed Paul Pullman and then sent me Paul Pullman's book. Net Zero, I believe, is the title of it. It's a wonderful book. If you haven't read it, do yourself a favor and read it. If 80% of what he wrote is true, it's how businesses should be run. So it struck me that you were sort of there when Unilever was going through that big transformation. So that's a highlight of mine of that company, which I don't know a ton about, but what were some of your highlights?
I think I like it that it seems like such an organic thing that happened within the company, and so it has been part of the journey for the whole time. For me, I spent kind of the first 10 years in more traditional roles, like local, global, big brands, small brands. Worked in Argentina, did some portfolio strategy, and for me, that was so important to learn the foundations to where I get my energy, which is now much more in the innovation space, because I learned what I can bend and break and what I can't. And then the last kind of 7 years have been much more in the digital innovation data space. First, kind of leading research innovation at Unilever. So all the digitization of the methodologies, which that's how you and I met. That was an absolute blast, working with just amazing internal leaders and getting to really overhaul 88% of that toolbox in a really short time, and bring in significant levels of advancement in AI and analytics and tool development. And then the last 4 years have been like a whole new adventure before my current role of into the first party data, and how do you create more meaningful conversations with consumers with audience analytics and digital data and the massive potential there. So I think for me, what's been really cool is like purpose and how to better serve our consumers is at the heart of the purpose strategy that Paul brought in. And that's at the heart of what we want to do as Insights, is serve people and serve consumers. But being able to do that in a really cool way and continue that work now in my current role is something that gives me a lot of energy, and the knowing that I have made that impact is what my highlights are as well.
I love it. And at the risk of pivoting our whole conversation about something I'm really passionate about, I want to have a coffee with you next week to talk about first party data, because
yes,
I'm really passionate about it, and we need to get this industry and get there much quicker than we are.
It's crazy. It's such a high potential space, high return, and it is so misunderstood. There really is not much standardization around it as well too. So yeah, we can definitely have a very long coffee on that. But
thank you.
I think insight staying at the center of that is really critical, because it is, you don't want it to get lost in efficiencies and other elements. You want to keep the human at the center and how to use data to have a more meaningful connection.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, so I'm going to be quiet now because this will pivot our entire conversation. But folks, a bit of foreshadowing. The second part of this conversation is something that Marie and I are equally passionate about, that we stumbled upon in our chat we were having recently. So we'll have two fun sidebars. So your personal purpose makes a lot more sense to me now. But I was preparing for this conversation, and I was on your LinkedIn page. I believe the kids call it creeping. I was creeping. And you have a personal purpose that says, tilt the world by creating a place for divergent creators, builders, and innovators to belong and thrive. Yeah. I love it. I love the fact that you have a personal purpose. I derived one from reading a bunch of Brene Brown stuff, and it's not nearly as cool as yours. But what does that mean to you? And like, how did you get at it? I'm really hoping our audience can start to use your answer to think about theirs, because what a compass that must be for you to guide you.
Yeah. Unilever had this kind of wonderful program around helping people to find their personal purpose. And, I went through it pre-COVID, and I think I had my personal purpose then was around, always finding a better way and inspiring teams to do that. And I think going through COVID and seeing so many people around me, my friends, my colleagues, really struggle with that sense of kind of belonging both in the broader world and within the work they do, kind of reminded me back to a lot of the core values that I hold. And around that, growing up, I was always really passionate about um I think I had like a babysitters club about entrepreneurship. I think I had about 5 different. I had a candy ring at one point in my junior high. Just really passionate about building businesses, but I always felt a bit odd, like that I never kind of fit in. And I think growing kind of within that environment and seeing and the importance of creating that environment, working with especially data scientists, data analysts that have different, not just personality profiles, but a lot of times different learning styles and different ways that they get energy and motivation. I could just see how critical it is to modern leadership and to me personally to make sure that they feel like and that everyone on the team feels like they can bring their unique skills to the table, and that I as a leader am creating an environment to where they feel like they have the room to do that in their own style. And for me, I've worked for some amazing leaders in the past that created that environment when I was leading research innovation. Stan and VJ and all of the leadership there, they really created that environment to where we could build and innovate in our own ways and support us throughout. And I think for me, that was something that I wanted to be able to hold core to my values and core to what I want to do when I go to work every day.
It's amazing. All right, so I'll share mine since people that tune into this probably heard me ramble. Mine's not nearly as cool as yours, so I'm going to rethink it though. So I'm really competitive, and so there's a bunch of things that I am doing. So I'm a leader, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I want to be the best version of that I can be. But one of the things that strikes me, and it relates to, I think, some of the belonging and kindness that you were discussing. You don't need to be mean to be a successful business person. Like I was raised by baby boomers, and it was like, you have a job, be thankful for the job. That's all you've got. And so I want to be the best that I can be while still being kind is my purpose. So I believe you can run a successful company and be kind to people. I don't think those two things need to be at odds. So maybe mine just isn't ambitious enough. That's what I'm thinking. But anyways, we'll talk more about me another time.
No, I love that. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, like it's a gift that people choose to spend those hours. It's like such a significant portion of your life that they choose to come work with you, be on your team. Like
It's true.
There is no, like, no one has to come or do or stay at a job at any time. I think we're seeing that especially right now with the mass movement of talent, and they're really like there's no reason not to be kind. Like this is not
good point.
yeah, like it's and I think having that kind of patience too, and knowing like you're not perfect and other people aren't perfect is really important. So I love that. I love that you can be kind and successful, because I think that's the new generation.
I think so too. Like I had a new employee who was saying, "Oh, I can't believe the culture is actually what you say." And my response is, in 20 years, every company is going to need to be like this, or they're going to be out of business. Strikes me that we work in highly skilled knowledge jobs, but apply a lot of the same principles to factory work in the 70s. And it's like, it's a completely different paradigm. And yeah, I think the businesses that get that are not impacted as much by the Great Resignation, right? But the ones that don't, I mean, the 30-40% churn that you read about is real. I mean, that's existential. But I think it starts with what you said. People choose. They get to choose whether they do or don't spend their precious hours with you or not. And so, you know, if you know that, then it's easier. It's easier to do a good job.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you are now in a really high profile role, your first top job in the insights business at, I believe, the biggest beer company on the planet.
Yeah.
By quite a bit, if my research proves me accurate. So, but also a big change, different companies, every company is different. I used to always say to people, Coke and Pepsi both sell soda, but there couldn't be more different companies. So what are some of the things you're taking with you from Unilever, but what are some of the key observations and learnings you see several months into your new role at ABI?
Yeah, I mean, Unilever, I'm so grateful for my years there. Like, absolutely amazing leaders, world-class insights organization. So much that feels very nice now coming into this role that I've had kind of this foundation of just really excellence across a lot of areas and pushing the envelope and driving a lot of innovation there that I can use my experience to be able to help now with ABI. I think for me, ABI, again, that challenge of building something and creating a function and an inclusive function that can really help the business grow was such an intriguing challenge to me, and brought together all those different pieces of my experience. And I think, you know, coming into ABI, they have that founder's mindset, which is very oriented towards, you know, if you see the opportunity, go and build it. And that really called to me. And I think the amazing brands and how quickly they move on digital and data transformation all kind of created into the perfect storm for an opportunity for me to feel like I could live my personal purpose and also my passion areas of digital and data and helping businesses grow. So I think it's, yeah, you know, it's a very small industry and there's so many transferable skills, but it is really nice too to see, like, okay, those years of experience, being able to have a lot of applications and a new role and help new people.
Yeah, and I remember we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago when we had a chat, but even though they're both massive businesses, both wanting to digitally transform, it struck me that the how and the tools and the way are going to be very different, which I imagine for you as a learner is quite intellectually stimulating. So you have some skills, but it's like, oh, I still got to figure this problem out.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating because it's also too, you know, I grew up in Unilever so many years there. It's fascinating. You see things that you're like, I've never thought of that before. And that's amazing. And so I think it is really great. Like for me, the passion of always kind of learning and trying to learn from others, like that really is giving me a lot of energy. And then I think, you know, just iconic brands, is talk about being able to have such a large impact on the business, and with the company strategy switching to more organic growth, it's just such a critical time for consumer insights, and the business is hungry for transformation and continuing to be on the front edge with that here as well.
Love it. Okay, so this is the part where I go off our script a bit because I have a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
You probably knew where everything was at Unilever. I'm resonating. Your last statement resonates with me because I worked at Canada for a really long time and knew how to get stuff done. And the only thing that saved me was there was nothing to find at Zappi when I got here. It was this 4-person company. I was like, so what? How did you navigate like at Unilever knowing the players? I mean, I imagine access wasn't a problem, legacy information wasn't a problem, mistakes that have been made in the past and present weren't a problem. So that's an advantage in some cases, but if you go to ABI, it's a completely new language. It's a new governing structure. So was that a challenge? And if not, like, how did you overcome that?
I mean, absolutely. It's like starting it felt like I was having a kind of a first day of school experience again. And I had to remind myself that I had actually already graduated and gone through many grades. But, you know,
you're an adult, you got this.
You know, I mean, I think people are kind of people everywhere, and I think what really helped is just being welcomed so warmly by so many people who were offered me their time for talking through things, for helping me to navigate, for onboarding me. And so I think it is still, it's interesting though, because I can kind of take a step back and be able to see things a little bit more objectively of how information flows and how influencing happens, because it's so new to me.
Right.
But at the core, it's like the same foundation of people who want to grow the business, who want to do right by the business, who are smart and driven, and like that's very consistent between the companies. And so it's definitely like drinking from a, a fire hose, but there's a lot of great things like, what's the fundamentals of great creative? What's the fundamentals of great digital strategies? Like all of those fundamentals that being an insights person teaches you sets you up to be really strong at any other business, whether it's in insights or not. And that's why I always say I think insights people make the best entrepreneurs, because you have to actually do the research on all the different elements, write the recommendations and all the other elements. So there's a lot there that is transferable, but being humble enough to understand that not all of it is transferable, and to kind of go into that learning mode as well.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So there's a couple things to unpack there. So um, fresh eyes or objectivity. What a gift. Like, how do you keep that, right? Like I try to keep them, but it's hard when you're close to it. So to your point, there's no bias in you when you're new. And if only we could have like that thing from the Matrix to just like keep those as we go.
To reset. I know.
Yeah.
I had a old leader many years ago say like your most valuable time at a company is like your first 90 days, because you're seeing all of these it's kind of good like behavioral economics, right, where you're supposed to challenge the category norms, and your first kind of 90 days is like your one chance whenever you're in a new role. It can be internal within a company too, but whenever you're in a new role, like you are so valuable to look at things to say like, wait, why do you do this? Why do you assume that is the norm? And so I think it is making sure to take the time to kind of write those down too, because everything's coming at you so quickly. But I think it's a lot of fun. It's almost like a piece of research in itself. Research on
Totally.
research on on job.
So actually, this is validating. So we do new employee onboarding sessions. So Steve and I meet with new classes of employees once a month or so, and they come they read our strategy, and they've been onboarded and so on and so forth. And then we use Miro to basically guide what they want to talk about. So questions, and then I always put a section in, where do you think we're getting it wrong? What ideas do you have? That is gold, what those people say, because they don't have any like ties to the words that were written historically, other than they bought into the company's purpose, right? So it's like, and so I guess that's one way to steal objectivity, is to harness that time and try to scale it. Because I wonder how many companies ask the new person, what's in your notebook? Like, because that's gold in those pages, it's really important. So there's one other thing. So there's actually two other things, but you talked about researchers are good entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
I believe product people need to be entrepreneurs. And I was interviewing a potential product manager the other day who has zero product management experience. They're a quality moderator. And I was sitting there for the first 10 minutes going, why am I on this interview? And then question after question after question came. And I said, now I get it. Because the ability, and I'll use my vocabulary, but the ability to do great discovery enables you to see the problem, which then allows you to solve it. And unless you have to go back to entrepreneurship, unless you're a founder who started a business to solve a problem you have to do discovery to understand if there's a problem. Otherwise, you're just a tech geek who's created something that's looking for a problem it solves. We haven't actually followed through with that experiment yet, but if I do, I'll let you know how it goes, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think to that like keeping fresh aspect, it's really critical that everyone figures out what that means to them. Like there should be something that has nothing to do with your current job that helps you keep that outside in perspective. Like for me, I love working with female founders, work with a number of female founders in New Jersey, just coaching and offering advice on everything from like digital strategy to like it's pitch decks. And for me, like in that purpose, like it actually keeps me super fresh because now I know what the latest Shopify updates are. I know how Facebook changed their ad manager. And like those are minor things. It sounds like, why would you need to know that? But that actually helps me understand kind of the pulse of how that whole world is changing, like what's usually the technology that startups are using, things like Canva, et cetera, is like very, it's very saturated there, and it's something that corporate is not even thinking about, like shifting all their creative use to an easy use platform like that versus a traditional agency model. And so that for me is like what I both get energy from and keeps me fresh. But for other people, it could be, having their own podcast and having to do research for it and talk to external people. For someone else, it could be doing Coursera on a random topic that has nothing to do with work, but actually always ends up bringing back to it. So I just think it's finding, what keeps you fresh, because if you feel stagnant or you feel stalled, that is not just because of your job. It's also because you've probably lost that keeping fresh outside too, to kind of re-inspire, re-motivate.
Love it. I love it. It also probably, I'm going to ask you another question on this topic. I'm so glad you shared this. It also, if you're not doing that, it also should be a question of if your purpose and your company's purpose are in alignment. Because if it is, I believe everybody has superpowers. I believe that everybody's got something special. But if you're not thinking about it and how to improve, then perhaps that's not the best use of your time. Again, this isn't 1970 anymore. But the reason I want to come back to this is people might listen to this and say, of course, Marie's involved with startups. She's the global head of insights at ABI. I will have you all know, we're not super close friends. We've known each other for a long time through work circles, but you've always done this for as long as I've known you. You were always involved in really small entrepreneurship communities. So the reason I wanted to say that assertively is because you found those channels. So for those of you who aren't at the top chair yet, yes, there's probably a relationship between Marie's growth mindset and the fact that she got there. But when you weren't, top of the insights org chart, what were some of the ways you went about getting involved in those communities?
Yeah, for me, I've always, it's a little bit selfish to the fact that like I really admire what they're doing. And I love the diversity of the community. Like you meet the most brilliant, amazing people, and you meet the craziest people ever who are just so dedicated to their mission too. And so for me, like that, part of it is like I feel like I benefit so much from that connection, and then I just try to help where I can from my knowledge. But I think for me, like there's so many communities. There's a great group in Hoboken where I live of female founders. There's you can volunteer to be mentors for things like, for me personally, I'm really passionate about female founders because they only get 2.4% of venture funding. But so there's lots of organizations that are dedicated to that, where you can be a mentor, you can bring a subject matter expertise. And sometimes too, it's even like particularly if you have a local company that you love, like just go and talk to the owner and get to know them too. But I think there's always a way. There's so many networks and meetups for whatever area you love. And I think it's just finding those people that you feel like you just feel that energy from, and that mutual benefit from too. Like I can learn from you and you can learn from me, and that can be in any vertical. It doesn't have to just be startup. And I know you're saying like, what do you do? How do you do that with time? Like I have 2 young boys that are 5 and under. And for me, it's something that I kind of like try to weave into my work. Like I, loved making sure to find a spot to talk with Brian about the latest on what he's doing, because for me, I know that is important. And, I'm sorry, I'm terrible at email. So that's gonna fall backwards. But I think too, it's just knowing and feeling empowered that you can take control of your work and your time in that way too. Because if it is something like that can benefit the business, finding that priority of, leaving at 5 to be able to go to the happy hour, to meet people or to help someone else in the community is okay. And it's something that you can control to some degree as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the point you make about two-way value. Like you don't, Brian Glazer, he's a famous movie producer. He's produced dozens of famous hits. And he gave this talk at Summit, which you and I have talked about before. And he was talking about how he got his career started. And he was in the mailroom at the film studios in Hollywood. and he got a meeting with all these famous directors by saying, hey, I'm nobody, but I got some ideas that can help you sell more movies. And then he built his career off of that two-way value exchange. And obviously now you're in a position where your value is extremely concise on a piece of paper, right? I buy things, I work for a major company, but your brain was smart before those things were all true, right? And so it's really interesting. So I want to ask you another curveball question.
Yeah.
You are an executive who has 2 boys under 5. How do you manage it?
Total chaos.
Thank you for being honest. It's a shit show at my house too.
It's total chaos. I think for me, like I have very strong divides between the time that I'm spending with them versus the time that I'm at work, and that kind of really re-energizes me. And to be honest, I used to work for a wonderful boss who would block his calendar from 6 to 9 p.m. at night so that he could spend time with his boys, and like he set that example. And it's also something that I feel like I want to set that example too, that I can't control the fact that daycare still have early closures because of COVID. So when I leave, and on the weekends I try to avoid, because I know if I send an email, then someone's going to feel like they need to respond to it. And so I think it's I've found an environment at both companies and that is really supportive of that and understanding of that. And I think it's also to knowing, like, if you don't set the boundaries, someone else will set them for you, and they're not going to be in your favor. And so I think it's one of those, it's like, what's the worst that can happen if you set those boundaries and trying it out and seeing kind of what works for you. But I mean, it's tough. It's like total chaos all the time. School shutdowns all the time, in and out. So, but it's for me, it's worth it.
But what an example you're setting. I mean, I will say, like, on a personal note, when I started doing, so I have 6 to 9 blocked off, 7 to 8 every morning. That limiting of hours actually helps you prioritize a little more. I found I'm better at the things that I do decide to do versus like just being on all the time. But you're setting a wonderful example. So thank you for sharing that. I want to talk to you about a work-related topic now. It's something that you're the first person I've ever met who's validated this hypothesis. So
sample of one.
Virtual hugs. I know. Let's see how many likes we get when we post this podcast. Although you've dropped so much gold that it might be for any one of the other dozen insights you've given. But I struggle. I really struggle with the fact that we're asking people to both elevate their game, be storytellers, be business people, be psychologists, synthesize multiple sources of information, with also being the people that figure out which tools to use, how to use them, how to set them up to scale. And I link this to what I've seen happen in software, which is you always had sales and customer success, and then revenue operations became a thing. Mm-hmm. I think we need to start an insights operations movement, Marie. What do you think?
Absolutely. If you think about insights organizations, especially within corporations, and what has happened over the last 10 years, like there is probably everywhere half the amount of internal insights professionals inside large corporations as there was a long time ago. Not referring to any specific company, but that's if you look at the industry trends. So here we have our most precious resources, very difficult profiles to recruit. They have to be digital savvy, they have to be storytellers, they have to be strategic, they have to feel comfortable provoking the business, but they need to know all their data, they need to be able to wrap it in a story, and they need to make unicorns for the business as well. So here we have
a small outcome there at the end.
Here we have this limited resource, and yet we are investing that limited resource in rechecking the same brand lists and rechecking the same standardized questionnaire and sending 40 emails back and forth on tools. And it just doesn't make sense from a investment perspective. It's not the best ROI, and it doesn't make sense from a people perspective of how you remove grunt work from people's plates so that you can unlock the potential and make sure they have energized by work. And I think that's why looking at the operation side, how do we bring even more kind of tech and process and flows to operationalize that type of research that we do a lot and really isolate where can those professionals add in, where it's adding lots of value rather than managing kind of the back of house. And so I think we are, if you look at like outside industries and what they've been able to do for, back to startup tech, like what Shopify does for operationalizing what used to be tons and tons of code, what Canva does for making it very, very easy to make beautiful designs that can actually be paid ads, what some of the flows for CRM do, like we need that for insights. Like we cannot continue to ask our people to be these unicorns and operationalize and stay and retain at our companies and grow and provoke the business. And so I think I'm fully aligned to that. I think the more that you can platform and operationalize and remove that so that your outsourcing process and insourcing thinking, the better.
I love it. I've long had this dream of seeing on somebody's resume, certified Zappy admin. It will happen one day. So I've seen this happen. So I've seen in a few businesses, centers of excellence work with marketeers and insights people to say, this is the instance. Are we all happy? These are the success metrics. Are we all happy? This is the enablement of how to use it. Cool. We're going to do all the grunt work and roll it out. That way y'all can get the data in stride. So my question to you is, and I think this is more than a sample size of 2, by the way. I have chatted with this with more people. It's just the vocabulary of insights ops. What's the business case, right? So in a trend where we want to create super unicorns, but money's tight, and it's particularly going to become more tight. We appear to be on the bridge of a recession. Supply chain's a bit of a mess. What's the pitch?
I mean, it's just the core, getting a better ROI out of your investment into your insights teams. Like, if you have, very limited resource, if you have, one person and they can do, 40 hours a week, work a week, do you want them really spending time on editing questionnaires and chasing down and asking, the stimulus was 2 days late, can you please still deliver on time 2 days, even though we were late? No, like you want them thinking about and looking into hypotheses of here's opportunities for the business to overcome these supply chain issues, these growth issues, understanding what is going on in our consumers' lives, not in the city where the office is located, but in the actual country or regions that their consumers are located, and being able to provoke the business. And that takes time, and that is a much better return for the business. Like, do you want me to identify $100 million opportunity for you, or do you want me to ensure that our 20 different pack tests have the custom questions built for each that you're probably not going to look at in the report anyway?
That's a really good angle. And I think to add to it, it's like, you're not going to get the person who can unearth the $100 million opportunity if you ask them to program surveys and run data tables all day. They're not going to want to do that job. I do think that, because I think part of this does require us recruiting from outside the industry. But I love what you say, Marie, like the inspiration from outside the industry. Like, let's not just look at ourselves. I mean, there's adjacent industries solving similar problems. I mean, the rise of revenue operations came because there was all this tech created to enable the growth rates of companies, but the sellers weren't talking to customers. And so it's like, you're paying all this money to create growth for your company, but your sellers there's all this Gartner data about this, but like your sellers are navigating your own toys all day. So they're not talking to your customers, which means they're not growing your business.
Yeah. Like we don't need, like, I think the kind of where companies will move, especially in strain resources, like we don't want necessarily researchers. We want strategists and provokers and people who can find opportunities, who use research and data as their superpower, but use it smartly as their superpower versus use it as what they do day to day. And so I think it's, instead of having kind of that affiliation to, I am an insight person, I'm a data analyst, having affiliation to, I help grow the business and I use my special skills to do that, I think is where the imperative is and must be for us as an industry to continue to thrive and continue to grow. Otherwise, we're going to be left at the wayside.
Yep. So you said at the beginning of our conversation, and I'm paraphrasing, so I'm not putting words in Marie's mouth, but my takeaway, right? Like, you learned a lot of the basics you learned the rules so that you could know where you could and couldn't break them. In a world where you want to hire storytellers, provokers, business people that may or may not have the grounding of what good data looks like, how do we teach them that? I won't bias you with anything. I have thoughts, but I'll shut up.
So I think there's like a generalist knowledge you should have and can teach on some of those things, and there's the specialist. And I think, I mean, it all comes down to, do you know who to call? And are you humble enough to call them? And so, what I'm looking for people, if you're operating in that area, if it's not your specialty area, I remember working in MMMs earlier on. I'm like, this is not my area. Do you know the person to tap to get that view, to pull into the circle, who wants to be in your circle, to advise on that, and then learn a ton from them while they're doing that, so that next time you maybe need to call them a little bit less. But then second, are you humble enough to know and call them? Because I think where people get themselves in trouble is that two things. One, they try to just go at it anyway, and they don't acknowledge, like, I might need someone else. I might need some of my networked resource to help advise on this and help me learn from them. And then the second thing is, people confuse activity versus impact. So I see this a lot of times in like method innovation is, let's just do some cool, fast, cheaper things. But faster and cheaper alone is not necessarily like driving your business forward. You're just doing things you used to do and maybe like a cool tech spin. That's very different than impact and doing things faster, cheaper, and better, and in a way that you're going to see consumers and opportunities before your competitors, because they're not doing it that way. And so I think that activity versus impact is one that's really critical to help people learn how to differentiate, help them learn how to focus on impact versus activity and pull in that resource.
I love the faster, cheaper, better. I mean, particularly today, 2022. Isn't that crazy? That's the year we're in.
I can't.
The gray hairs that are sprouting up everywhere now make sense. But faster, cheaper is table stakes now. So it's like, cool story. Like, what else you got going on? You said something really profound. You're bringing the heat in this conversation. I'm not surprised, by the way. It almost feels like the world has taught us that we have to know the answers for everything. I love what you said about MMM. You knew what you didn't know, and you were okay in being vulnerable and saying that. And like, I feel like that isn't normal, and it should be. How many people feel like they get this job and they have to BS their way about knowing it all, but they actually don't. And I say this to a lot of our employees, like, I actually view it as a strength. If you're like, I genuinely don't have a clue, any advice of who I can go figure it out, or so-and-so does, let me talk to them about it. And I think about this a lot raising young kids. Like, think about a time when your parents may or may not have done this, but it's just because the way it is, or it's always been done this way. And so like, I struggle to ever use that vocabulary in this house, because I'm like, well, just keep saying why. It's a great skill that I think we do take away from people. So I'm glad that you are leading people, knowing what you don't know, carving out time for your kids, and also making massive career moves. So I can't thank you enough for this time.
No, thank you. Thank you. It's been wonderful to catch up.
It really has. Final question before I leave you alone. I like to go all the way to my allotted time with wonderful leaders like you. There's a lot of movement in the market. A lot of people are going to go on the same journey as you. They might be a director and they're looking for that number one job, that global leadership role. What advice would you give to those individuals that you wish somebody gave to you? Now, I know you've had the benefit of some incredible leaders, but what's some advice that you would give?
Yeah, I would say know your personal purpose before you even start looking. Like, at minimum, you should know what are those few things, the elements, the components, the attributes that you want to have in the next role. And if you were to manage yourself, like your CEO company Ryan, like, what would be that skill or that new business acquisition that you'd want to add to your portfolio? And I would say definitely consult other people, like ask for opinions, but don't, you have to take the decision yourself. But sometimes when you're debating between different opportunities or whether to leave or stay, they can give you some really good perspective and objective perspective, ideally on the different opportunities, or help you think through things. They should never tell you what to do. That's probably not a good advisor. I saw a study around change and how change is almost always a good decision that people are happy they made a year, 2 or 3 years later. So there's definitely something to be said to change, but there's also a lot of things going on right now with being restless from being home from a long time, being restless because so much is going on. We don't want to live through any more unprecedented events.
Please
so
no.
yeah, so I said just have a strong sense of yourself and what you want before you change, so that you can make sure it's building towards your North Star.
Wow. I'm sad that this conversation is over. Marie Van Blaricum, thank you so much for your time. I will see you in Austin, Texas. Everybody listening, I hope that you were as pumped as I am leading this. I'm actually buzzing with energy. I'm going to go like Marie offered, and I'm going to go hang out with my kids in the backyard now. Marie, have a good day.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Patricia, you have some key takeaways and a bonus goodie for everybody today. What's up?
Yes, it's amazing. She, the only way that I could title this was 8+1, because, I love the plus ones, applicable learning from a great journey. There's just no other way. I mean, she's amazing, right? And I'm just going to call her MVB because I'm not as good at pronouncing names as you are, even though my name is a mouthful. But she's just so cool, and everything's just easy, and she has passion. And I think if I were to choose one word that would, like, the passion, it's all about passion. But let me get started on my 8+1. Number one, I'm going to start with a pitch. And just a little foreshadowing, I'm going to end with a pitch too. Just keep that in mind. Ooh. So I'm going to start with
You're
HR.
such a pitcher pitch. Now that you're an entrepreneur. Look at you.
I know. Me and my pitches, something learning new, 2022.
Yeah.
Woo.
Oh.
So fallen into insights. Get it? See what I'm doing there? Haha, right? An HR pitch.
Yes, I see what you do there.
So do you ever ask yourself why people leave the TV on when they're not watching it? Or do you ask why when you look at the mirror at yourself, you tilt your head? Maybe it's time to let yourself be chosen by the insights industry. Even if you don't understand what insights is about, listen, because it sounds interesting and it might turn out to be a natural fit. You get to learn about every single aspect of the business and what makes great communication. You're asked to give your points of view all the time, how to grow the business. There are always new businesses to work on and new ways to innovate, and you get a seat at the table where you get to drive the strategies of the business. What do you think?
The only thing missing from your pitch is like some creepy dude coming in with like, and this may make you lose all your hair. Proceed with caution. Available at pharmacies nearby. And like that, I'm in. Like, I feel like it's almost too good to be true.
It is too good to be true. I've been doing my job for almost 30 years and I still love it. WTF, guys. It's like, wow, like amazing. So that was number one. She created that and you said that should be turned into a pitch. So I turned it into a pitch for you. Number two, learning at the University of Unilever, right? And some people say Unilever here in Columbia, they say Unilever. So, Unilever. Number six courses. The first one's foundational and traditional. It's all about those roles that are local, global, big and small brands, portfolio strategy, right? Then there's number two, all about innovation roles, space to learn what can bend and break, what can and can't be done. It's just as important to know what you can't do as what you can. You usually end up doing both. There you go. Number three, digital roles, innovation data, leading research innovation, digitization, God, I have a hard time with that one, of the methodologies, which means about 88% overhaul of the whole entire toolbox so that you get significant levels of advancement in AI and analytics. Number four, digital marketing and analytics roles, which are all about creating meaningful conversations with your consumers, with audience analytics and digital data. Then there's number five, which is getting closer to today, first party data roles. There's more to come on that. That's like a teaser for later, but later in the season, used to better serve our customers. It's a high potential space with really high return. There's so much to be done because it's misunderstood and there isn't much standardization yet. So we've got lots to do there. Insights needs to keep the human at the center of first party data roles. And overall, the top of the top from Unilever, from MVB, overall amazing leaders, world-class insights organization. That was our number two. Ready for number three?
Yes, ma'am. I'm so excited.
She's now getting her master's at ABI and Bev, right? She talks about insights as a small industry with many transferable skills. I really loved how she said that experience, no matter what experience you have, always has an application to your new role. So just look for the application. And I thought that was amazing because there's always bridges to be built, because at the end of the day, it's about being able to help new people, right? She says her new challenge is about creating an inclusive function that can really help the business grow. And I'll bet most of us have a challenge that is worded something like that. So I think there's a lot to be learned from her. Number 5 is day 91 and going, right? It gets real after that. It really does. It still is like the first day of school while you're drinking from the fire hose, right? People are everywhere, but people are people the same everywhere. And they're all welcoming and they're all offering help. Take the offers. MVP accepted all offers for help. And she said that was one of the things that helped her most. She took a step back to see how objectively, information flowed. So she was able to have a clear mind without having drunk the Kool-Aid yet. And at the core, she says it's the same. People are smart, driven, and want to grow and live right and do right by the company, right? She said, discover the fundamentals. Insights, people are good at that. Do it. It's a discovery, it's a skill, right? And that's why insights people are so good at being entrepreneurs, because they have an excellent learning mindset and they're ready for anything. They see the problem, they write the recommendation, they solve it. Number 6, this one's yours, Ryan. I really like this.
Ooh, I have one?
Yes, you did. Maximizing superpowers. I love it when you talk about superpowers. Remember you talked about superpowers? You said everybody has superpowers. Everybody has something special to contribute. I love that. I love that, right? Make sure your purpose and the company's purpose are aligned, or at least complementary, so you have some common ground, and reach out and find ways to grow yourself and help the company grow, right? There's probably a relationship between the growth mindset and having career growth, and make sure you tap into that, okay? Number 7, this one's applicable, and she described it so beautifully, and you helped. Managing chaos, right?
Yeah.
She said that having a strong divide, and you echoed her right away, and I have 3 kids, so I remember the time. Strong divides between personal and professional. You set the boundaries, try them out, see if they work. And then you said, if you don't set the boundaries, somebody else is going to, and they're not going to be in your favor. Then she said something lovely, which I'm going to paraphrase as walk the talk. She said, people, don't send mails on downtime, because people see what you do more than what you say. So if you send a mail in downtime, people are going to feel obliged to reply. So don't do it, right? And you said limiting work hours actually helps you prioritize more. So do that too, right? Number 8, advice to a younger self. Find and live your mission. Oh, music to my ears. Her mission, tilt the world by creating a place for divergent creators, builders, and innovators to belong and thrive. That was MVB's. Yours, I want to be the best I can while still being kind. I decided to put myself on the line too.
Let's hear it.
Encourage and enable growth in all things every day. So I put those there because it took us a while to get there. I mean, I've been around for a while, so it took me a while to polish it and figure out why I was here, right? Why is it important? Find your mission. Ask yourself, what moves you? What brings you energy? Make your mission real by seeing and feeling the importance of your mission, not only for others, but for yourself. Why is that mission important to you? What does it give to you, right? Grow your mission by contributing to groups or communities with similar passions. Perpetuate your mission by finding a way to have a two-way exchange. You give, they give, you learn, they learn, you grow, they grow, everybody grows. Be a virtuous cycle, something that feeds itself. The results of having a mission is staying fresh, motivated, and inspired. And then at the end, leverage your mission when you're looking for growth for yourself, career growth, personal growth, all the things you're looking for, building towards your mission. Now, you might have heard some passion in that voice, but this is one of those points where this is my soapbox coming out, and I just want everybody to know who they are. It's so important. It doesn't have to be written in stone. Modify it, evolve it, change it, optimize it, live with it. It's great. You can tell I like that one, right?
I like it.
You ready for the bonus content?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna try not to curse as much. I have a swear jar in my family now, so I have to pay $10 per curse word. So I just
my God, you're going to go poor.
I just caught one. So you carry on. I very much look forward to the bonus content.
I'm going to tie this all together with a beautiful little bow, right? You started off with a lovely, lovely topic that you were just a little bit passionate about. And, you can tell you and I are just a little passionate about what we do. It comes out, right?
Like what I do.
Yeah, it's something I love to do. And then I started off with a pitch. So I figured today I'd bring balance to the world by ending with a pitch. An insights operations pitch, because you want to have insights operations because you want better ROI out of your investment of your insights team. Because you prefer strategists and provokers and people who can find opportunities, who use research and data as their superpower, but use it smartly as their superpower versus use it as a day-to-day. You should want insights operations, because you want to move away from having your people say, I'm an insights person, I'm a data analyst, to I help grow the business and use my special skills to do that. You're going to be unlocking potential and re-energizing your teams. Without insights operations, you add grunt work to your team's plate, and you don't want to do that. With insights operations, you operationalize much of the work you manage to do to use the house, you manage the house with. Right? With insights operations, insights professionals can add value rather than managing things, right? Back of the office on their desk. And because many others have succeeded, you are going to be outsourcing processes and insourcing thinking with insights operations. Did I convince you?
I like that pitch. I'm buying. And your pitch links to the thing that I'm ranting about. It's all interconnected.
Go for it. Of course.
It's all interconnected. It's the same thing. You need people to build the systems that people will use. Make them relevant to the brand, make sure they work in the countries, make sure that the data speaks to each other, make sure that they're easy, make sure everybody's enabled. Insights ops. So that the people you pay a lot of money to get more strategic and smarter have time to do that. And the reason why both teams need to let go of their Legos is because the people closest to the problems need access to the data. That doesn't mean that as an insight storyteller, you're not important. It actually means you're becoming more important. So all three of these things need to work in harmony, which is why global teams, local teams, and marketing and innovation teams need to be on this ride together for us to really unlock the potential of growth that we might be missing on. Great pitch, great episode. Up next on Inside Insights is our very own Shazia Ali, who manages our community. She is also an entrepreneur. She built her own consultancy business and has recently decided to join Zappy. It made me feel like the New York Yankees for a minute. Sorry for the overly American sports metaphor. She's like, yeah, I want to join a winning team. Like, this is kind of cool. So Shazia and I are going to talk a lot about culture and leadership and finding your own personal purpose. So it'll be more of an episode about you. And I hope that we can give you some ideas to be introspective about where you're heading in your own personal journey. We've got, I think, 4 episodes left in season 4. Again, thank you for nominating and voting for us. It means a lot to us, seriously. If I could ask you to give us a rating on whatever platform you're using, it really does help. All this stuff works on algorithms, so it'll help more people get recommendations. And we, despite winning this cool trophy, that's a functioning microphone, we are still the new podcast on the block. So we would appreciate your help spreading the word. Kelsey, thank you. Patricia, thank you. Columbia Wi-Fi, you suck, but we made it through this episode.
Yes,
and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Bye.